Welcome to the podcast, Kelsey. I'm so excited to have you, and we're going to talk about websites today.
Yeah, thanks for having me.
Yeah, so why don't you give listeners a little intro on your background and what you do and to help moms and women with their websites?
Yeah, let's see. I used to be a teacher. That changed when I first had my first baby.
Hmm.
Just wanted a different lifestyle for myself that was a little bit more flexible for parenting. So I found freelancing in a general sense. And then once I built my first website, I was like, this is really where I want to be. I loved doing it. And I was like, I want to do this for others. And it's like the perfect combination of like techie and creative, which is just like
Hmm.
a sweet spot. And I have three littles now at home. They're all pretty much home almost all the time because no one has started real school yet. So it's
Oh my
a lot
gosh.
of having little kids around. So if you're in it, like anybody that's listening is in it with the little kids, I feel you.
You're in the weeds, yes.
Yeah, it feels that way. It feels that way. I will thrive, I think, in a few years. I think survival is the word right now.
Yeah,
Yeah, but that's okay. That's okay. Everybody goes through the ups and downs of parenting and the different stages of life.
sure.
But I really love websites. I focus on strategy first. So even before I design, we talk about the different ways that we want people to move through the website. What's the main goal for the website, and how can we achieve that through the design? And then I actually build the website based on that strategy that we come up with together. That's where I start. Then we build, then we launch, and then we test it out and see how it goes.
Yeah, I love that because that was like a little succinct summary, but I think a
Yeah.
lot of people are just overwhelmed by the idea of a website, and maybe
Yeah.
they don't even think they need one, which I completely disagree with that, but
I really think it like depends on who you serve, what kind of business you there's a lot that can play into whether you need a website. I do think eventually it's necessary. It gives
yeah.
you authority, it makes you look
Hmm.
authentic and real. Like
Hmm.
without a website, it's okay, is this like an actual business? There's ways around that, but at some point you get to the point where you need to level up and have that website.
And
Mhm.
it's having a website is one of the best ways to get a professional email.
Yep.
And I really am dubious about anybody who's, hey, here's my service, and they have a Gmail or Yahoo or whatever.
Yep.
So that is one reason why a website is important. But also, like, we're all burnt out on social media. We're all just like on this content creation track. And so, can you talk about how having a website can really help get us off that content creation and hamster wheel, and then our content survives longer? So, talk about why we need a website and why having a strategy is so important.
There's a lot that can go into that. So
Yeah.
I'm not going to say you're probably not going to ever do content creation, whether that's on
Oh,
Instagram
sure.
or emails or blog, like you're still creating something to drive people to your website, right?
Hmm.
But once they land on on your website, you need a strategy there to get people to actually do something on your website. We don't want to just have them land there and be like, I don't know what to do. I don't know what's happening on this website. I'm confused. They're just going to leave. They're not going to stick around. So, in
Hmm.
order to get them to do something, there needs to be like that strategy in place to guide them to working with you, to get them to take that action that you want them to take. Let's say it's book a call, right? We need to guide them on that journey, navigate through the website correctly to get them to take that main call to action, that big thing we want them to do on the website. So that's where like the design strategy plays in. There is definitely ways to get them to your website, but it's also important that once they land there, they know what to do.
Right.
Mm-hmm.
So, what if somebody's thinking about creating a website or just beginning to think about working with somebody for their work site? What do you recommend the basics are for your website?
I would say make sure there is a strategy in place. Like websites can be pretty. We want them to be pretty, right?
Yeah.
Like they should represent like that we want them to be pretty, right? But there's so much more that can go into it too. Like
Hmm.
a pretty website is only that. It's only a pretty website.
Hmm.
We want it to actually serve us. We want it to be one of the better marketing tools for our business. And the only way to do that is to make sure that there's a strategy behind that design
Mm-hmm.
to get them to navigate to where we want them to go, right?
Mm-hmm.
And it might not be that someone's super ready to book a call, but they should be able to navigate through your website easily
Mm-hmm.
without jumping through 15 hoops to get there
Mm-hmm.
while still learning more about you.
Mm-hmm.
There's so many pieces that can go into the website itself. Just like there's so
Mm-hmm.
many ways to get people to land on your website, there's so
Yeah.
much that goes into the build of it too to make sure that
Mm-hmm.
we're not losing people. One of my biggest tips, and it should be simple, I
Mm-hmm.
think, I don't know, it should be obvious, is especially moms, we
Mm-hmm.
are on the go so much. We are
Yeah.
constantly on our phones rather than at a computer. I cannot stress enough how important it is to have your website mobile optimized. That is like my number one tip of all time because
Mm-hmm.
I go to websites from my phone, from social media, whatever. Like
Mm-hmm.
if you're putting the effort to market on Instagram or
Mm-hmm.
Pinterest or whatever, and people click to your website from their phone, they should be able to work your website from their phone. And too often I'm like going and I want to click something in the menu or I want to click the button and they don't work. And I'm this is you're missing prime opportunities, especially if
Yeah.
your target market is moms.
Mm-hmm.
Even women are on the go and we're busy. Like we
Mm-hmm.
have so much like going on all the time. So
Mm-hmm.
to really resonate with your target market, if it's women and moms,
Mm-hmm.
make sure it's mobile optimized. Like I just can't stress
Yeah,
that
no,
one
that's a
enough.
great tip.
Really,
So,
that's like my number one tip for sure.
yeah, do you have any like basic pages that you think are should be included? Because I know there's a lot of back and forth about that.
Yeah, my favorite pages for a service provider or even a coach really is have a homepage,
Hmm.
have an about page. We'll circle back to what an about page is. A services or kind of work with me or about
Hmm.
your program, whatever that kind of looks like, whatever you offer. And there needs to be a way to contact you, whether that is a form, whether that's even just in the footer. I don't know if you necessarily need a page for contact. I like having them because I think it is easy to
Yeah.
navigate people there. Sometimes people aren't ready to click the book a call button and they
Yeah.
need like the form. They need to be
Mhm.
able to email you. So they need to, I feel like it's good to be able to reach out. And maybe they don't fit into your like normal mold and they want to make sure that you can serve them in the same way.
Mhm.
Having that little contact information is helpful. But could you have some of those things all on the same page? If that's like your first website, I think that's fine. You can do it all on your like all on the same page. Just
Mhm.
make sure you still have a menu that like navigates through that page. Like you can
Mhm.
anchor it that way. But your about page isn't necessarily like a biography about you, right? We
Right.
want to learn more about you, but we also want to learn how you serve us, why you want to serve us this way. Have you been there before and you've overcome this? Like it's more than just I am this age and I have these kids and I grew up in this city. That's good. Have that
Mhm.
on there. You know, have some fun
Mhm.
facts about you. But it's more than that too. And it's a way to optimize your about page, your website in general to really connect with your audience. I feel like that's a
Mhm.
good connection page. Whereas you can talk more about like your actual services, your pricing, what's included and that type of thing on your services page or your work with me page.
Yeah. No, and your website's great. It's beautiful and it's got all that stuff. So
Thank you.
definitely we'll leave Kelsey's website information in the link below and you can check that out. So you were talking about moms and of course moms are listening to this podcast.
Yeah.
So how can do you I'm guessing you also help with messaging if you're putting it together, right? And some of the words we're using on our websites to appeal to many of our ideal customers, which are probably going to be women and moms for the most part, right? So, how can we begin to curate our websites to appeal to more moms and women?
So again, I'm gonna say mobile optimization,
Yeah.
just because we're just gonna hit that real hard. Can you tell I'm passionate about that?
Now you're making me nervous. Like,
Well, and like that's the thing
M
is
is
like,
my website.
but that's also the thing is like sometimes on the editing mode of your website,
Yeah.
it looks fine. And then you go to the
Yep.
actual mobile device and it's different.
It's
So
totally happened to me.
really test it. It's happened to me so many times. I'm like editing and I like refresh the page on my like
Yeah.
phone to make
Like I
sure it's
know I
like
saved this.
Yeah, sometimes it's just different. It just is.
Yeah. Or it's got the weird color block that's not what you saved and it
Yeah. Just double check on an actual device.
Yeah.
Don't trust the edit mode all the time.
Yeah.
But there's also ways like messaging is super helpful. If you can invest also in a copywriter,
Hmm.
that is going to serve you really well because they're so good at like capturing your audience and the words that they use and things like that. You don't want me to write your copy, trust me. But I can say this is like the section where I want you to talk about the transformation you provide. This is the section I want you to tell me how you overcame this. Like we talk about how to connect with the audience. I'm not going to write the words for you, but I will outline
Gotcha.
this the sections for you so that
Hmm.
if you want to fill it out, great. If you want to hire your copywriter or work with your copywriter on your team, they can do that also.
Hmm.
But it matters. It
Hmm.
matters. But we also like want like really clear headlines.
Yeah.
And I mean clear in more than one way, both in like the font. We don't want to use like font that's really hard to read for the clear headlines because some
Right.
people are only going to skim your website reading the headlines. They need to A, be able to read them, and B, know what you do. So there's the design piece to it is making sure it's a font that's easy to read, making sure it's a color that's easy to read. Use a color. I like a color for a headline. It pops off the page more than like the black paragraph text, but it shouldn't be like soft pale yellow on a white background. Let's have some
Right.
contrast so that our eyes are drawn to these headlines. But then in like the copywriting piece to it, make sure it tells people what you do. Like it can be clever, but it can also be clear what you do and how you serve the target market that you're working with.
Hmm.
So there's so much into the design piece to that, but also in the copy, but all plays
Yeah.
together. And that's where you can really optimize things there.
Yeah. So, do you have any other tips on how we can maybe optimize our websites? And then I was thinking too, what are some of do you have any preferred ways to create your website? Like, do you just do WordPress or yeah, I was curious about that.
Yeah, I'm going to take that as two separate things. I work with WordPress. It's the one that I started with. I like it the best. I think it
Hmm.
has a lot of room for flexibility and growth and customization. I have tried working with some of the other ones. Other clients have tried working with the other ones and they're like, think some things just don't work there. Some of the other ones do serve other clients super well, and that's fine.
Hmm.
Everybody has what works for them. WordPress
Hmm.
is just what worked for me, and we got people off of other platforms because it wouldn't allow for us to do the things we needed to do. So I think it's very future proof and it's very heavily used also.
Yeah.
So there's a lot of resources about it. You want to be able to do something, you can probably type it into YouTube and it'll tell you how to do. There's so many people
Yeah.
using WordPress that it's easy to research. Any other tips for like design wise? Oh, there's so many things. We already talked about a little bit about font and color, but there's so much
Hmm.
more that goes to that. Don't overdo the fonts. Two or three is good. We don't need 7 different fonts on a website.
Oh no.
Making sure at least 2 of those is clear and easy to read. You can use a
Hmm.
script font, like a little fancy cursive font, but we're not going to
Hmm.
use that for big chunks of text. We're going to use
Hmm.
that to accent different things. Hi, I'm Kelsey. That's a
Hmm.
nice, it's personalized. It feels like kind of fun and fancy
Hmm.
without it taking away from who I serve, right?
Right.
Playing up color is helpful and not just in the text, but using them as color blocking backgrounds,
Hmm.
boxing things can really break up a website to make it easier to scroll through. Sometimes it just
Hmm.
is overwhelming if you see like paragraph after paragraph on a white background.
Hmm.
So, can you separate that paragraph or those paragraphs into different sections with different color backgrounds, or even as an image in the background? Throwing in an image side by side with text gives us a little bit of, oh, this is not overwhelming.
Yeah.
A lot of words right in front of your face is hard. It's just hard to consume. We get a
Hmm.
little overwhelmed and we don't want to read it. That's not ideal when you're trying to
Right.
get somebody to work with you.
Yeah.
So, can you break up that stuff? Can you even reduce the amount of words on your website? If you look at my website, I don't have tons of words, but I think
Yeah.
people know what I do and who I serve and how I can
Right.
help them get there. I think having your main call to action as a color pop button is super helpful.
Sure.
Like people then know, oh, that's my eyes are drawn to that. I want to be able to hit that button, right?
Hmm.
Making sure that button actually links somewhere.
Ah!
Sometimes we forget to put the little URL on the button. And so it's like
Yeah.
clicking to nothing. So That's in the testing phase. Make sure you test your website,
Sure.
right? And again, test it on mobile because sometimes those buttons get overlapped with things and they just end up not being clickable, even though you'd linked it.
And make sure they link to a new open page sometimes, you know?
Yes. Yes. If it's in like external site of some kind, love it in a new tab, please
Yeah.
and thank you. Yes. We
Yeah.
want people to be easily we want people to easily navigate back to your website. So if it's in a
Mm-hmm.
new tab, then it's just easy for them to click back to your website if they feel like they
Mm-hmm.
need to learn a little bit more about you or they want to know what happens after they click that button. I love having what are the next steps to working with you on a website so that they feel a little bit more confident clicking that button.
Yeah.
Sometimes they're like, oh, I don't know, am I locked into a decision here? Whereas if you tell them like, what's the next steps here, it makes it a little bit easier for them to want to click it. They don't feel as this is solid, this is 100% set in stone. It gives us a little bit more of a comfort feeling.
Yeah.
um, Thinking about how people like navigate through your website, don't make them jump through 10 different pages to landing to work with you or to getting them to take that main call to action. It should be quick and easy. And maybe they need to go to an about page or a services page to learn more about you or your services. Great. Offer them that call to action again, type of thing.
Yeah.
Yeah.
What are some of the things that your clients struggle with the most when they come to you and are like, Kelsey, I need a website?
It's a wide range. Some of them
Uh-huh.
are just frustrated by the design.
Yeah.
Some of them are frustrated by the back end. They're like, what are all these plugins? Do I need them all? I'm like,
Oh, right.
probably not. They
Yeah.
got overwhelmed and other people have played with their website so many times that there's so much stuff on there now that they're like, what do I actually need? I'm like, not all this.
Right.
So sometimes it's like simplifying the process a little
Mm-hmm.
bit. They might come because their website's not converting and like where they're sending people to their website, they've got high traffic, but then they don't hear back from anybody. That to me is like a big sign that like something on your page is not working strategy wise. So it's a wide variety of why people come
Yeah.
to me. Some of
No,
them
those
don't
are
have a
great
website at
points.
all and they're like, I'm ready for a website. And I'm like,
Right.
perfect.
Yeah, no, that's awesome. So I was curious too, like what are some of the outcomes that your clients have come to you and said, "Hey, now my website's converting," or yeah.
Yeah. Yeah. I had somebody come back and she said she didn't have a website before. So hers wasn't necessarily not converting. She didn't have one,
Yeah.
but she landed 3 clients in the first week that she launched her new
That's
website. It was like
awesome.
amazing. Another one, she couldn't get her website to do what she wanted it to do on a different platform. We moved to a different platform. We moved to WordPress and got it to do what she needed it to do. And now it makes her life easier because her potential clients can just navigate through things so much easier and actually do what they need to do instead of her doing it by hand and by like phone calls.
Hmm.
So it simplified the amount of work that she needed to do on the back
Hmm.
end. Things like this just
Yeah.
it just depends on what their goals are. Like her goal was to get this piece of it up and live so that she could have more time to do other things. Like I'm always
Right.
about can you free up time that you're spending doing something else, whether
Yeah.
that's constantly sending people and it's
Hmm.
not converting. And so then
Right.
you're like still sending more and more people. Whereas if
Right.
you send a few and you can land those, or at least one or two of those, then your efforts can be put somewhere else.
Right. No, it's a really great point because you can even have a frequently asked questions page
Mm-hmm.
or something like that. If
Yep.
you're somebody who's getting the same questions over
Same
and over
questions.
again,
Yep.
you can link a scheduler, which I think everybody should have a scheduler. You do not need to be going back and forth with somebody about times. You can create something that just has your availability and then somebody just picks from it and can
Yep.
even pay you in the same scheduler. So
Yep.
that's a really great point that it can automate a lot of things if you're not like, I don't really need a website. True, but I think you can build in a lot of that automation. So that's a really great
Yeah.
point. Yeah, so let's talk a little bit about you being a mom entrepreneur because I know my listeners love to hear the stories
Mm-hmm.
of other women and moms going through what they're going through. So, how has it changed your life and do you love the decision that you made?
Yes. I love the decision so much. If you know anything about the teaching life,
Yeah. Oh,
it's not very freeing. And I only had one when I decided to stop teaching. I
uh-huh.
cannot fathom what it would be like with three,
Yeah.
especially it's whatever date, but I have had sick kids off and on
Yeah.
for 4 weeks now. I don't know how I would
Yeah.
have been a teacher with kids home
Right.
on repeat. Like one has been sick for 4 days this week. Like he could not
Hmm.
go anywhere. He couldn't
Yeah.
even go to his like little preschool that he goes to twice a week.
Hmm.
And the like the flexibility of not
Yeah.
teaching is amazing. Could I just be home and not be an entrepreneur? Sure. I like having something that's mine. I feel like I
Hmm.
spend a lot of
Yeah.
my time and energy taking care of kids, making sure they're fed, making sure they're sleeping, making sure they're healthy, taking them places that I like that this is mine. It's something that I get to grow that's not a human being. I feel like I've been growing
Yeah.
humans in one way or another for almost 6 years now. Is it hard? Yeah, it's hard to find the balance. It's hard to not feel guilty about doing things. But then I think, okay, I could have been teaching for 8+ hours a day and they could be in daycare and we'd spend 2 hours in the evening together a few days a week.
Yeah.
So I feel like it's while we sometimes feel mom guilt, it's okay to feel it. And
Oh,
it's
yeah.
okay to realize I find that it's okay for me to spend time doing things that I want to do too,
Hmm.
because otherwise I wouldn't have had, I don't know. I like having something for me and I like that this gave me that lifestyle. I can't fathom going back right now.
Yeah.
It's
Yeah.
there someday if I want it. I don't want it right now, but it's there someday if I want to go back to
Yeah.
teaching. I hope not. I like this too much to think about like working for someone else again.
Yeah, no, I think once you have dipped your toes in the entrepreneurial
Mhm.
world, it's just really hard to imagine going back, but it's
Yeah.
great to have options.
Yep.
So
Yep.
yeah, so
Yep.
how have you overcome some of your biggest obstacles or things you had to learn, like maybe creating a schedule for yourself or learning to take care of yourself in the midst of being a mom and a business owner?
Yeah, I'm still working on it. Let's be
Sure,
honest.
everybody is. Oh my
Um,
gosh.
like my big goal this year, like 2024, is I felt like I was spending too much of my working and not putting it down. Even when I was like spending time with my kids, I was still like, oh, I can be on Instagram while I'm, sitting here watching TV with them. I'm trying to find those pockets of time where I can work and I'm trying to limit it to that. It's not
Hmm.
an everyday thing where I'm successful, but I
Right.
feel like more days I'm doing better than I was.
Yeah.
Fridays, I've been keeping to like only 2 hours of work when like, two of them are kind of napping. I don't know if they don't really super nap, but they go and do something in a different room at least. And I just leave the mornings open for whatever like comes our way that day. Maybe
Yeah.
it's a trip to the library. Maybe it's a trip to the zoo when I'm feeling adventurous. But my oldest starts kindergarten in the fall, and I'm like, I'm gonna miss him. I mean, I know
Yeah.
he's driven me crazy for the last however many years because he's been home
Yeah.
all the time, but I'm gonna miss him. I'm like, oh, you're finally at the stage where you're like more fun than you are work. Like
Yeah.
toddlers are a lot of work. Not that
Yeah.
they're not fun, but he's like a person. And I'm
Yeah.
like, I'm gonna miss you in the fall. So I'm really trying to optimize the Friday mornings for like stuff with him. Like maybe we sit and do a puzzle. And then the other
Yeah.
ones are around and they hang out with us too. But I'm trying to set stronger boundaries for myself. And it's a day by day basis.
Sure. Oh, yeah, it is for us all. And
Yep.
my oldest is a senior. She'll be a senior next year.
Yep.
Yeah, I'm so glad I started this journey when they were that little. I can look back on those times and
Yeah.
I don't have any regrets
Yep. The
at
only
all.
regret I have is I didn't start sooner. It would have been a
Right.
little bit nicer to start before any of them were born.
Yeah,
Just
oh,
kind of get your,
yeah, but I've talked to so many entrepreneurs who are like really find that hard too, that transition of, wow, it was really easy before I had kids. So they constantly have this reflection of,
of what it was
man, they
like.
knew how it used to be.
That's interesting. That's an interesting take. I see it as I didn't know I needed to change my life until he was here. It was like, oh,
Right.
he means more to me being
Yeah.
gone all this.
Yeah.
I had a really hard time with daycare and drop-offs and it was
Me
just
too. That
not
was
for
my
me.
whole,
And some
I,
people thrive that way. They
yeah,
love
oh
they love their
yeah.
time in the office or in the school.
Right.
Great for them. I'm excited for
Right.
you. It just wasn't for me.
No,
So,
me neither. And that was really my introduction into being an
mhm.
entrepreneur because I'm like, I can't do this.
Yeah, I think we spent 2 months in daycare before I was like, nope.
Oh gosh,
I
I
was
would
like,
get to the door and start crying. I couldn't even go
yes.
visit them. I
Mhm. Yep. I
was
was
like,
like
we're
2 months
going
in, I was like,
home.
let's find a different route for my life. But it was scary. It's scary to
Yeah.
make a big change like that. But I am forever thankful for sure.
Yeah. No, I love that, Kelsey. You've given us so many great tips and information on a topic that's so important for our
Yeah.
businesses, but can seem so difficult and overwhelming. So, if you want listeners to take away one message or a few messages from our conversation, what would that be?
I can give a few. Again, we're going to say mobile optimization. Make sure it's mobile optimization.
Yeah.
We've hit that one pretty hard. In general, make sure you have a strategy. It like it should be working for you. It shouldn't be harder for you. Like your website should be doing things for you even when you take a step away from
Hmm.
your computer or from your phone or whatever.
Right.
So making sure whoever you work with, if you decide to work with somebody or if you decide to do it yourself, that there's a strategy behind the design because you don't want to
Hmm.
just send people to your website and then not hear back from them. We want them to actually take that action.
Yeah.
The other thing is if you decide to work with a web designer, I am very passionate about you being able to take back over your website. So make sure that someone is either training you on how to handle your website or they include something like that. Or if you already know
Hmm.
how to do it, great, and you just don't want to design it, that's fine. But I would feel guilty personally if someone was like, "Oh, I need you to update my pricing for me and change out this image and switch the colors for this. How much would that cost?" Like you can pay me to do it, sure, but I feel very passionate that you should be able to do that also. So I always include like offboarding training videos, anything you want to know about your website to make sure that you can keep it running happy, healthily, and be able to make those edits. So those are some little tips, but
That's an awesome point because I have heard entrepreneurs tell me, yeah, I'm waiting for my website person
mm-hmm.
to do this little change. And I'm like, you don't know how to do this yourself?
Yeah, yeah,
No. So that is an excellent point that
mm-hmm.
maybe in your what you're looking for and when you're looking to work with somebody to build your website is to make sure that they do include that training component.
Mm-hmm.
And that brings up an excellent question. Do you have maybe a few things that somebody should have on their checklist of the person that they want to work with?
Yeah. Do they There's like a few different things you could do they offer like strategy, do they help you with copy in some way? Again, I'm not going to write your copy, but I will help you outline it. I want to make sure that it's strategic in the order that it's going into.
Hmm.
Do they offer that offboarding tutorials? Do they have any post launch support? Do they mobile optimize? Goodness gracious, hopefully everyone does. Let's double check.
Never
I
know.
don't know. Things like that. Just thinking through all of the bits and pieces. Their websites have so much involved in them, and there's so many
Yeah.
different things that you can include in a website package or offer. So
Hmm.
really just making sure what's important to you and what you want to get out of your website is
Hmm.
what's included and ask those big questions.
Yeah, no, that's such a great list. And I'm sure that listeners are going to want to reach out to you and learn more and check out your website. It's
Yeah.
so cute. It's great, very informative and not overwhelming. You're not like too much information like you were talking about. So
Yeah.
you can even just get great insight just doing that and looking at that. So
Yeah.
where can listeners reach out to you?
Yeah, my website is kelseyromine.com. That is where you can learn more about my services. You can apply to work with me, things like that. You find me active on Instagram. That's at kelsey.m.romine. That is where I am at most often. And then I also share freebies there from time to time. I have them linked in my bio if you want. And I do have some digital products coming available also. So,
Nice. All
yeah.
right. So I will put links to all of that in the show notes. And thank you so much for joining us today and sharing some insight on how we can optimize our websites and find the right person to work with to help us do that.
Yeah, thank you so much for having me.
Yeah, absolutely.